The news of Kim's defeat spread across human space faster than wildfire. Every news network, every social media platform, every communication channel carried the same horrible images of their champion being thrown around like a toy by the massive alien warrior. The fight had been broadcast live to billions of people, and now everyone had seen proof that humans were weak on Earth. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Protests erupted in major cities, with some people demanding immediate military action against the aliens, while others called for complete surrender to avoid annihilation. The government buildings were surrounded by angry crowds who wanted answers that nobody could provide. Kim lay in the medical bay of Station Alpha 7, staring at the ceiling while doctors treated his injuries. His ribs were cracked, his left arm was broken in 2 places, and his face was swollen beyond recognition. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the knowledge that he had failed. His entire species in front of the galaxy, Dr. Kim So-Ra. His younger sister sat beside his bed, reviewing medical scans and trying to offer comfort. She was one of the station's xenobiologists and had been studying Valoran physiology since their arrival. Her gentle voice tried to reassure him that he had done his best against an impossible opponent, but Kim could hear the doubt in her words. The door to the medical bay opened, and Sergeant Lee Dong-min entered carrying a tablet full of news reports. His face was grim as he approached Kim's bedside. The reports were getting worse by the hour, with military experts claiming that humanity should immediately begin negotiating surrender terms before the aliens lost patience. Social media was filled with videos of the fight from every possible angle. Amateur analysts broke down each moment, showing how completely outmatched Kim had been. The comment sections were brutal, with people calling him a disgrace and demanding to know why Earth best. Warrior had been so easily defeated. On the diplomatic level, things were even worse. Ambassador Park was being recalled to Earth to explain how the situation had gone so wrong. The alien delegation was making increasingly bold statements about human weakness and their need for Valoran guidance. War Commander Vel Tar spoke to reporters about establishing permanent bases in human space. Sub-Commander Kresh Talk had become a celebrity among the alien crew, giving interviews where he described humans as amusing pets who thought they could fight real warriors. He demonstrated his strength by crushing steel bars and lifting equipment that required machines for humans to move. His contempt for humanity was obvious and growing stronger each day. The human crew members on Station Alpha 7 walked the corridors with their heads down, avoiding eye contact with their alien visitors. The defeat had broken their confidence, and everyone felt the weight of representing a species that had been proven inferior. The aliens noticed this change and seemed to enjoy the psychological effect. Kim watched the news reports in silence, absorbing every insult, every analysis, every prediction of human subjugation. He studied the footage of his fight overlooking for details he had missed during the actual combat. His sister noticed his obsession and worried about his mental state, but Kim insisted he was fine. The military command on Earth was in chaos. Some generals wanted to launch immediate attacks on the alien fleet, while others argued for diplomatic solutions. The problem was that humanity had never faced opponents with such overwhelming physical advantages. Traditional military tactics seemed useless against beings who could tear apart tanks with their bare hands. Religious leaders across human space struggled to explain how this fit into their beliefs about human uniqueness and divine favor. Some claimed it was a test of faith, while others wondered if humans had been abandoned by whatever higher power they believed in. The philosophical implications were as devastating as the military ones. Economic markets crashed as investors realized that human independence was about to end. Trade routes that had taken decades to establish became worthless overnight if humanity was going to become a Valoran colony. The cost of the defeat was being measured not just in pride, but in trillions of credits and millions of jobs. Kim's sister brought him detailed biological reports about Valoran, anatomy that she had compiled from medical scans and observations. The aliens were incredibly strong, but their bone structure was different from humans, with stress points that might be exploited if someone knew exactly where to strike. The information was fascinating, but seemed useless given the power difference. The alien delegation was preparing to leave Station Alpha 7 and return to their fleet. But first, they wanted to make a final statement. War Commander Veltar called for another press conference, where he would outline the terms of human submission. The ceremony was scheduled for the following day and would be broadcast across both human and alien space. Kim knew this was the moment when humanity would officially become a subject, species. The aliens would dictate terms that humans would have no choice but to accept. Earth would become a farming planet, providing food for the Valoran Empire, while humans served as manual laborers for their new masters. But as Kim lay in his hospital bed studying the biological reports and watching footage of his defeat, a plan began to form in his mind. It was dangerous and probably impossible, but it was the only chance humanity had left. The alien warrior was strong and fast, but he was also arrogant, and that arrogance might be his weakness. The news reports continued through the night, showing reactions from across human space. Children cried as they watched their parents try to explain what the defeat meant for their future. Military families prepared for the end of human independence, while scientists wondered if they would be allowed to continue their research under alien rule. Kim called his sister to his bedside and asked her to explain the Valoran skeletal structure. In detail, she showed him diagrams of their skulls and spine, pointing out the connections between their four-chambered brains and the neural pathways that controlled their incredible coordination. The information was meant to be educational, but Kim was studying it like a weapon manual. The alien guards outside the medical bay were relaxed and confident, believing that human resistance was broken. They joked among themselves about how easy the conquest had been, and how quickly humans had accepted their inferiority. But they did not notice Kim studying their movements and listening to their conversations. As dawn approached, Kim made a decision that would change everything. He would challenge Kresh Tak to another fight using human, cultural traditions that demanded a second chance to restore honor. The aliens would probably accept because they enjoyed humiliating humans and wanted to break their spirit completely. The plan was insane and would probably result in Kim's death. But it was better than watching his species become slaves without fighting back. The alien warrior thought he had already won, but Kim knew that the real battle was just beginning, and this time he would be ready. Kim asked his sister to help him prepare for what might be the most important fight in human history. She looked at him with fear and love, knowing that she might be helping him commit suicide. But she also understood that sometimes the only choice was to fight, even when victory seemed impossible. The humiliation of humanity was complete, but from that humiliation would come either total defeat or the spark of resistance that would change the galaxy forever. Kim closed his eyes and began to plan, knowing that tomorrow would determine the fate of every human who had ever lived or ever would live. Dr. Kim So-Ra worked through the night in her laboratory, analyzing every piece of data she had collected about Valoran biology. Her brother's recovery was progressing, but she knew he was planning something dangerous. The way he studied the alien anatomy. Reports told her that he was not accepting defeat but preparing for another confrontation. The Valoran skeletal structure was fascinating and terrifying. At the same time, their bones were denser than human bones, and their muscle fibers were arranged in ways that gave them incredible strength. The four-arm configuration was controlled by a complex nervous system that allowed independent movement of each limb with perfect coordination, but as So-Ra studied the medical scans more carefully, she began to notice something interesting. The Valoran's skull was thick and strong, but the connection points between their brain chambers and spinal column showed stress patterns. The four-chambered brain required multiple neural pathways that created weak spots where the bones joined together, She ran computer simulations testing different impact angles and force calculations. The results were disturbing but promising. A strike delivered at exactly the right angle with sufficient force could cause catastrophic damage to the neural connections. The alien would die instantly if the technique was performed correctly. The problem was that reaching the vulnerable spot required getting past 4 arms that could move faster than human eyes could track. The striker would have to absorb massive punishment while maneuvering into position for a single perfect attack. It seemed impossible for any human to survive long enough to deliver such a strike. Kim appeared in the laboratory, despite doctor orders to remain in bed. His injuries were still healing, but his determination was stronger than his pain. He studied his sister research with the focus of a man planning a suicide mission. The biological data confirmed what his instincts had told him. There was a way to win. Master Chief Yoon Jae-sung joined them in the laboratory, bringing years of combat experience and training knowledge. He was the station best hand-to-hand instructor and had trained Kim for many years. His weathered face showed concern but also understanding of what his student was contemplating. The three of them worked together, developing a fighting strategy that could work against a 4-armed opponent. The technique required Kim to abandon all defensive measures and focus entirely on positioning and timing. He would have to let the alien hit him while moving closer to the target area. They modified training equipment to simulate Valorant reach and attack patterns using mechanical arms that could strike from multiple angles simultaneously. Kim practiced the new technique for hours, absorbing punishment from the machines while trying to find the perfect angle for his counterattack. The physical training was brutal. Kim's body was already damaged from his first fight, and the practice sessions were making his injuries worse. But every failed attempt taught him something about timing and movement. His sister monitored his vital signs, while Yoon adjusted the training programs. Ambassador Park discovered their secret training session and immediately tried to stop it. She understood the diplomatic implications of another fight and knew that Kim's death would make the situation even worse. The alien delegation was already preparing to leave, and any new incident could trigger immediate retaliation. Kim explained his plan to the ambassador, showing her the biological data and the computer simulations. If he could defeat Kresh Tak, it would prove that humans were not helpless victims, but fighters who deserved respect. The victory might change how the aliens viewed humanity and open possibilities for real negotiations. Park listened to the proposal with growing horror and fascination. The plan was insane, but it was also the only hope. Humanity had left. The aliens were already preparing to impose their terms, and waiting would only make the final surrender more humiliating. Kim was offering a chance to die fighting instead of living as slaves. Intelligence reports from Earth confirmed that the Valorant fleet was positioning itself for planetary occupation. Military analysts believed the aliens were preparing to establish permanent bases and begin converting human cities into administrative centers for their new colony. The timeline for action was running out. Kim continued his training even as his body screamed in protest. Every movement sent waves of pain through his injured ribs, but he forced himself to continue. The technique had to become instinctive because he would only get one chance to perform it correctly. His sister provided him with detailed anatomical charts showing the exact location of the neural connection points. The target area was small and would be moving during combat, but Kim memorized every angle and distance until he could visualize it with his eyes closed. Master Chief Yoon worked with Kim on the psychological aspects of the fight, explaining how to use pain and apparent weakness to lure an opponent into overconfidence. The alien warrior would expect Kim to be broken and defeated, which could be turned into an advantage. The training sessions attracted attention from other crew members who quietly gathered to watch their champion prepare for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Nobody spoke about what they were seeing, but word spread through the station that Kim was not giving up. War Commander Veltar announced that the alien delegation would hold a final ceremony before departing to present their terms for human surrender. The event would be broadcast across the galaxy as a demonstration of Valoran supremacy and human acceptance of their new status. Kim saw this as his opportunity to issue a challenge using human cultural traditions about honor and second chances. The aliens would probably accept because they enjoyed humiliating humans and wanted to complete their psychological victory. The timing would be perfect. Ambassador Park finally agreed to support the plan after reviewing classified reports about alien intentions. The Valorans were planning to reduce human population by 60% and relocate survivors to agricultural camps. The fight was no longer about pride but about species survival. Kim spent his last night of preparation in meditation, trying to prepare his mind for what was coming. He knew the odds of success were minimal, but also understood that dying as a fighter was better than living as a slave. His sister sat with him sharing memories of their childhood on Earth. The morning of the ceremony arrived with Kim as ready as he could be. His body was still damaged and would not perform at full capacity, but his mind was focused like a laser beam on the single moment when victory might be possible. The plan required perfect timing and incredible luck, but it was the only chance humanity had left. Kim walked toward the gymnasium, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether his species would survive as free beings or disappear into slavery. The galaxy was watching, and history would judge whether Kim Tae-ho died as a hero or a fool, but either way he would die fighting, and sometimes that was the only choice a warrior could make. The final battle for human dignity was about to begin. The gymnasium of Station Alpha 7 had been transformed overnight into an arena. The human crew worked through the night-moving equipment and setting up recording devices that would broadcast the event across human space. What started as a friendly, cultural exchange had become something much more serious, and everyone could feel the tension in the air. Kim Tae-ho arrived early to inspect the fighting area and prepare himself mentally. He had fought in many battles, but never with so much riding on the outcome. This was not just about winning or losing, but about how the entire galaxy would view humanity. The fighting mat was large enough for combat, but felt small when he imagined facing the massive alien warrior, Ambassador Park Mi-young, paced nervously around the gymnasium, checking and rechecking the diplomatic protocols. She had tried to cancel the competition, but War Commander Vel-Tar insisted it was necessary for proper relations between their species. Her hands shook slightly as she reviewed her notes, knowing that everything could go wrong in the next few hours. The first aliens to arrive were the technical staff who set up their own recording equipment. Their devices were far more advanced than human technology, creating three-dimensional images that captured every angle. Their cameras floated in the air without any visible support, moving silently around the room like mechanical birds. Sub-Commander Kresh Tok entered the gymnasium like a conquering hero. His four arms swung confidently at his sides, and his massive frame seemed to fill the entire doorway. He wore only simple pants that showed his muscled body and the scars that marked him as an experienced warrior. His blue skin seemed to glow under the bright lights. The human audience filled the observation galleries above the fighting area. Crew members from every department had requested permission to watch, and the atmosphere was like a sporting event, but with much higher stakes. Children from the family quarters pressed their faces against the glass while their parents tried to explain what was happening. War Commander Vel-Tar took his place in the VIP section with the other alien dignitaries. He spoke quietly with his subordinates, but his eyes never left the fighting area. Kim could see the alien leader was confident about the outcome and probably had good reason to be. The physical differences between humans and Valorans were obvious to everyone. The rules were announced to the crowd by a human referee who tried to sound official but could not hide his nervousness. Hand-to-hand combat, only, no weapons, victory by submission, unconsciousness, or if the medical team called a halt. The rules seemed fair, but Kim knew they favored. The stronger opponent, Kim, stepped onto the fighting mat wearing standard military combat gear. His movements were controlled and professional, but inside his heart was beating fast. He had studied every piece of information about Valoran physiology and fighting techniques, but theory was very different from facing a real opponent who wanted to hurt him. Kreshtok entered the fighting area like a predator stalking prey. His four arms moved independently as he stretched and warmed up, showing off his flexibility and reach. The alien warrior was at least 2 feet taller than Kim and probably weighed twice as much. His reach with 4 arms meant he could attack from angles that were impossible for humans. The crowd grew quiet as the two fighters faced each other in the center of the mat. Kim tried to read his opponent looking for tells or weaknesses, but Kreshtok moved with fluid grace that gave away nothing. The alien smiled, showing sharp teeth, and spoke in broken English. So, everyone could understand, you are their best warrior. Kreshtok said loudly enough for the cameras to pick up every word. I will show Galaxy how weak humans are. You fight like child playing with adult. Kim did not respond to the taunts, but stored away the information that the alien wanted to make this as public and humiliating as possible. The referee gave the signal to begin, and Kreshtok immediately launched into an aggressive attack. His 4 arms moved like whips, striking from multiple angles simultaneously. Kim tried to block and dodge, but quickly found himself overwhelmed by the sheer number of attacks coming at him. The alien fighting style was unlike anything Kim had trained for. 2 arms would grab while the other 2 struck, or 1 arm would feint while 3 others attacked from different directions. The coordination was perfect, as if Kreshtok had been born to fight with 4 limbs instead of 2. Kim managed to land a few hits, but they seemed to have no effect on. The massive alien Kreshtok absorbed the punches without even flinching and responded with strikes that sent Kim stumbling backward. The power difference was enormous, and every hit from the alien felt like being struck with a club. The crowd watched, in growing horror, as their representative was systematically beaten down. Kreshtok was not just winning, he was dominating the fight completely. Kim blood began to stain the mat as cuts opened on his face and arms. The alien warrior seemed to be enjoying himself, taking his time and prolonging the punishment. After several minutes of one-sided combat, Kreshtok decided to end the demonstration. He grabbed Kim's throat with 2 hands while his other arms prevented any escape. The alien lifted the human off his feet like he weighed nothing, displaying him to the cameras and the watching crowd. This is your finest warrior, Kreshtok announced loudly. Humans are weak insects who dream of stars they cannot reach. Your species belongs under Valoran protection because you cannot protect yourselves. He shook Kim like a rag doll before throwing him across the mat. Kim crashed into the far wall with enough force to crack the metal paneling. He slid to the floor, gasping for breath while medical teams rushed to check his injuries. The fight was over, and the message was clear. Humans were no match for Valoran's strength. The alien delegation cheered their champion victory, while the human audience sat in stunned silence. The cameras captured everything, broadcasting the humiliation across human space in real time. Social media networks exploded with reactions ranging from anger to despair as people watched their hopes for equality being crushed. War Commander Veltar stood and began, speaking to the cameras about Valoran superiority and how humans should be grateful for their protection. He spoke about trade agreements that would benefit both species, but his words carried the undertone of a conqueror, dictating terms to the defeated. Kim was helped to his feet by the medical team, but he refused to be carried off the mat. He walked out under his own power, even though every step was painful. His face showed no emotion, but inside he was already planning what came next. This was not over despite what everyone else might think. Ambassador Park tried to control the diplomatic damage by praising the skill of both fighters and emphasizing the learning experience. But her words sounded hollow after what everyone had witnessed. The aliens had made their point, and now humanity would have to deal with the consequences. As the gymnasium emptied, Kim remained behind, staring at the bloodstains on the mat where he had been defeated. He replayed every moment of the fight in his mind looking for lessons that might be important later. The alien was strong and fast, but he was also overconfident, and that could be a weakness. The news reports were already calling it the most humiliating moment in human history. Military analysts discussed whether humanity should surrender immediately or try to negotiate better terms. The defeat had broken something in human confidence, and Kim knew that was exactly what the aliens had intended. But deep in his mind, a plan was already forming. The alien had revealed his fighting style and his attitude during the match. Information that could be valuable if used correctly. Kim had lost the battle, but the war for human dignity was not over yet. The real fight was just beginning. The massive alien ships appeared in Earth orbit like dark mountains floating in space. Their hulls were black metal that seemed to absorb light, making them look like holes cut into the starfield. Station Alpha 7 hung in orbit around Earth watching. These giant vessels with a mix of wonder and fear. The ships were 5 times larger than anything humans had ever built, and their strange design made them look both beautiful and terrifying. Lieutenant Commander Kim Tae-ho stood on the observation deck of Station Alpha 7 watching the alien fleet through the thick glass. His hands were steady behind his back, but his mind was racing with possibilities. He had spent 15 years as a Navy SEAL fighting in conflicts across human space, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. First contact with an alien civilization was supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement. But something felt wrong about these visitors. The aliens called themselves the Valoran Empire, and they had sent a message to Earth 3 days ago. The message was simple. They wanted to meet and discuss trade and peace. Their language was strange, but their translation machines worked perfectly. The words were friendly, but Kim noticed something cold in the way they spoke. It reminded him of how generals talk to prisoners of war, polite, but with hidden threats underneath. Ambassador Park Mi-young walked onto the observation deck carrying a tablet full of diplomatic protocols. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Kim knew she was one of the smartest people in human government. She had negotiated peace treaties between Earth and the Mars colonies, and everyone trusted her judgment. Her face looked worried as she approached Kim, the alien shuttle. That approached the station was unlike anything in human engineering. It moved without any visible engines gliding through space, like a fish swimming through water. The hull was smooth and curved with no sharp edges or visible weapons. But Kim could sense the power hidden beneath its elegant surface. When it docked with the station, there was no sound or vibration, just a gentle click as the airlocks connected. War Commander Vel Tar was the first alien to step onto the station. He was tall almost, 8 feet, and his skin was blue like deep ocean water. He had 4 arms that moved independently, and his face was angular with large black eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore no armor, just flowing robes that seemed to be made of liquid metal that shifted colors in the light. Behind him came 6 other aliens, all wearing similar robes, but with different colors and patterns. Sub-Commander Kresh Tak was the largest of the group, with muscles that bulged under his skin and scars across his arms that showed he was a warrior. His eyes were different from the others, cold and calculating like a predator studying its prey. He looked at the human welcoming committee with obvious contempt. Ambassador Park stepped forward with a warm smile and began the formal greeting ceremony that had been planned for months. She offered gifts from Earth, a collection of art, music, and literature that represented the best of human culture. She spoke about friendship and cooperation between their species and how this meeting would change both civilizations forever. War Commander Vel Tar accepted the gifts with what seemed like politeness, but Kim noticed how he handled them carelessly as if they were worthless trinkets. The alien leader spoke about the greatness of the Valoran Empire and how they had brought peace to dozens of star systems. His words were diplomatic, but there was an undertone that suggested humans should be grateful for this attention. The tour of Station Alpha 7 began with the aliens showing polite interest in human technology, but Kim could see they were not impressed. Their own devices were far more advanced, and they made no effort to hide this fact. When they demonstrated their holographic displays and energy weapons, the human observers were amazed, but the aliens seemed bored as if showing tricks to children. During the formal dinner in the station main hall, the cultural differences became more obvious. The Valorans ate differently than humans, using all four hands to manipulate their food with precise movements. They spoke among themselves in their own language, and Kim noticed they often looked at the humans and made what sounded like jokes. Their laughter had a sharp edge that made his skin crawl. Sub-Commander Kresh Tak was the most vocal of the aliens, making comments about human weakness and primitive technology. He spoke loud enough for everyone to hear, comparing humans to insects who had learned to use simple tools. Ambassador Park tried to redirect the conversation, but the damage was being done. The human crew members were becoming angry and uncomfortable as the evening progressed. Kim realized this was not the friendly first contact that everyone had hoped for. The Valorans saw humans as inferior beings who might be useful as servants or slaves. Their politeness was just a mask hiding their true intentions. He began to watch their movements and study their behavior, looking for weaknesses that might be important later. The aliens demonstrated their physical capabilities by lifting heavy objects that would require machines for humans to move. Kresh Tak bent a steel bar with two hands while using his other arms to gesture dismissively at the watching humans. His message was clear. Humans were weak and the Valorans were strong. This was not a meeting between equals, but a presentation of dominance. When War Commander Vel Tar suggested physical competitions to better understand human capabilities, Kim felt his instincts warning him of danger. The alien leader claimed it would be educational and fun, but Kim could see the trap being set. This was not about understanding, but about proving human inferiority in front of witnesses. Ambassador Park agreed to the competitions, hoping to maintain diplomatic relations, but Kim knew this was a mistake. The aliens had not come to make friends. They had come to evaluate human strength and find it lacking. The competitions would be a public demonstration of why humans should submit to Valoran authority. The evening ended with the aliens returning to their shuttle, but not before Kresh Tak made one final comment about how he looked forward to testing himself against human warriors. His smile was cold and predatory, and Kim knew that tomorrow would bring a confrontation that could change everything. As the station settled into night cycle, Kim stood again at the observation window looking out at the alien fleet. The ships hung in space, like sleeping giants waiting for something. He knew that humanity was about to face its greatest test, not in space battles or diplomatic negotiations, but in a simple physical contest that would determine how the galaxy saw his species. The first day of contact was ending, but Kim could feel that the real challenge was just beginning. The aliens had shown their hand, and it was not friendship they offered, but dominance. Tomorrow would prove whether humans had the strength to stand as equals, or if they would be forced to kneel before a superior race. The stage was set and there was no turning back. The gymnasium was packed beyond capacity, with every human on the station finding a way to watch what might be the final moments of their species' independence. The atmosphere was different from the first fight, filled with desperate hope instead of confident expectation. Everyone knew this was not just a sporting event, but a battle for the future of humanity. Kim entered the fighting area, moving carefully to hide the extent of his injuries. His ribs were taped, and his left arm was still, weak from the break, but he forced his body to appear steady and determined. The crowd fell silent as they saw their champion walking toward what everyone believed would be his death. Sub-Commander Kresh Tak strutted into the gymnasium like a conquering hero, basking in the attention and adoration of his fellow aliens. He had spent the past few days giving interviews about human weakness and boasting about how easily he would finish off their pathetic warrior. His confidence was absolute, and his contempt was obvious. The alien warrior had grown even more arrogant after his easy victory, believing that humans were incapable of learning or adapting. He saw the rematch as entertainment, a chance to humiliate Kim even more thoroughly while the galaxy watched. The psychological warfare had been so successful that he expected no real resistance. War Commander Veltar took his place in the VIP section surrounded by alien dignitaries who were already celebrating their species' dominance. The ceremony was being broadcast live to billions of viewers across both human and alien space. The political implications were enormous, and everyone understood the stakes. Ambassador Park sat with the human officials trying to maintain diplomatic composure, while her heart raced with fear and hope. She had agreed to support Kim's plan. But now that the moment had arrived, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The consequences of failure would be catastrophic for all humanity. The rules were the same as before, hand-to-hand combat, with victory by submission, unconsciousness, or medical intervention. But everyone in the room knew this fight would be different. The alien was fighting to prove his superiority, while Kim was fighting for the survival of his species. Kim took his position on the fighting mat and began his mental preparation, blocking out the crowd noise and focusing entirely on the task ahead. He visualized the anatomical charts his sister had shown him, memorizing the exact location of the neural connection points that represented his only chance for victory. Kreshtok approached the center of the mat with theatrical gestures, playing to the cameras and enjoying the attention. His forearms moved independently as he warmed up, showing off his flexibility and reach. The size difference between the fighters was even more obvious under the bright lights. The alien warrior began his psychological warfare speaking loudly in broken English, so everyone could understand. "You return. For more punishment, little insect, I will break every bone in your body before I kill you. Your species will watch you die and know they are nothing." The crowd stirred angrily, but Kim remained calm. The referee called for quiet and reviewed the rules one final time. The medical teams were standing by with emergency equipment, knowing they would probably be needed. Kim's sister watched from the observation deck, her face pale with worry, but her eyes filled with determination. The signal was given to begin, and Kreshtok immediately launched into the same aggressive assault that had dominated their first encounter. His forearms blurred with speed as he attempted to overwhelm Kim with superior strength and reach. But this time, Kim's response was completely different. Instead of trying to match the alien aggression or defend against the multiple attacks, Kim focused purely on movement and positioning. He allowed himself to take significant punishment while slowly working his way toward the optimal angle for his counter-strike. The crowd watched in horror as Kim absorbed blow after blow without seeming to fight back. Blood streamed from cuts on his face, and his breathing became labored from the sustained assault. But those who knew him best could see the method behind what looked like madness. Kreshtok grew increasingly frustrated as his attacks failed to put Kim down as quickly as expected. The human was taking damage, but somehow remained on his feet, moving with purpose, despite the punishment. The alien began to make mistakes, overextending his strikes and leaving brief openings. Kim cataloged every movement, every attack pattern, every moment of overconfidence. He was building a mental map of his opponent's behavior, while enduring incredible pain. The technique his sister had identified required precise timing and positioning that could only come from intimate knowledge of the enemy. The alien warrior became more aggressive and reckless as his frustration grew. He had expected Kim to collapse within minutes, just like their first fight. But the human kept moving, kept positioning himself for something that Kreshtok could not understand. The crowd began to sense that something was different. Master Chief Yoon watched from the sidelines, recognizing the strategy that he had helped develop. Kim was using the alien overconfidence against him, drawing him into the exact position needed for the counterstrike. But the window of opportunity would be incredibly small, and the execution had to be perfect. Ambassador Park gripped her chair arms as she watched Kim take punishment that would have killed most people. His strategy was working, but at a terrible cost. His body was reaching its limits, and she wondered if he would survive long enough to attempt his planned counterattack. War Commander Veltar noticed the change in crowd dynamics and began to look concerned. His champion was still dominating the fight, but something felt wrong about the human persistence. Most defeated warriors would have given up by now, but Kim kept moving with apparent purpose. Kim felt his strength fading as the alien assault continued, but his mind remained focused on the single moment when victory might be possible. He had absorbed incredible damage, but he was exactly where he needed to be. The anatomy charts his sister had shown him were burned into his memory. The opportunity came when Kresh-Tok decided to end the fight with the same throat grab maneuver that had finished their first encounter. The alien warrior was confident and careless, reaching down with both upper arms to seize Kim's neck. This was the moment Kim had been waiting for. As the massive hands closed around his throat, Kim saw his target the exact spot, where the alien skull connected to his spine. The angle was perfect, and the alien-owned momentum would amplify the force of the counter-strike. Everything his sister had calculated was falling into place. Kim's entire body became a weapon focused on, delivering one perfect strike to the precise location that would cause catastrophic neural damage. The technique required every ounce of strength he possessed, but also perfect timing and placement. The margin for error was zero. The gymnasium fell, silent, as everyone sensed that something critical was about to happen. The alien was completing his victory gesture while Kim prepared to attempt the impossible. The next few seconds would determine the fate of humanity, and neither fighter fully understood what was at stake. Kim closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, visualizing the strike one final time. Then he opened them and saw his target waiting for the blow that would either free his species or kill them both. The moment of truth had finally arrived. Kim's hand shot upward with surgical precision, his knuckles aimed at the exact spot where Kresh-Tok's skull met his spine. The strike carried every ounce of strength Kim possessed, amplified by the alien-owned downward momentum and the perfect angle. His sister had calculated the impact created a sound like breaking glass that echoed through the silent gymnasium. Kresh-Tok's eyes widened in shock and confusion as the blow landed. The massive alien warrior had expected to feel Kim struggling uselessly in his grip, but instead felt something snap inside his head. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Shooting through his nervous system like lightning, the alien hands released Kim's throat as Kresh-Tok's nervous system began shutting down from catastrophic trauma. Multiple fractures spread through his skull like spider webs, while critical neural pathways severed completely. His forearms went limp as his brain lost control of his body. Kim stepped back, gasping for air and watching as the enormous alien warrior collapsed. The fall seemed to happen in slow motion as Kresh-Tok's massive frame crashed to the gymnasium floor with bone-jarring force. His body convulsed briefly as his nervous system tried to function with destroyed connections. The gymnasium erupted in stunned silence that lasted for several heartbeats as everyone tried to process what they had just witnessed. The alien champion, who had seemed invincible, lay motionless on the fighting mat while the human warrior who had been written off as weak stood over his defeated opponent. Then the silence shattered as human crew members exploded into cheers and shouts of disbelief. They had watched their species representative get beaten and humiliated, but somehow he had found a way to turn defeat into victory. The emotional release was overwhelming as people cried and hugged each other. The Valorant observers sat frozen in shock, unable to accept what had happened. Their champion was dead, killed by the same weak insect he had humiliated. Just days before, the implications were staggering and would change everything about how they viewed humanity. War Commander Veltar rose from his seat, his face showing a mixture of fury and something that might have been respect.